What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast as a proud partner of the Gyro Step Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac, and I'd like to get my apology out of the way early. I am sick, but I told you guys to be back in your podcast feeds this week as we talk about free agency opening rather than the tampering period reopening or opening. Um, I saw I I was running around all day today. But I'm pretty sure I saw a tweet that said that the NFL agreed to a rule change where you get like 5 interviews with the agent of players prior to tampering. I was like, what are we even doing anymore? Like, tampering isn't that big of a deal in terms of free agency. Like, it happens every year, right? These teams have discussions with the agents prior to free agency. We all know what happens, right? Why even under the veil of like I guess transparency say okay you can meet with them prior with only 5 players though or agents or whatever it is. I don't know, it's all very dumb. It's all very dumb, but regardless, I told you guys in your podcast feeds I'm very nasally. I can hear it right now, so I'm gonna try to blow my nose throughout to make it a little better, but who knows. So if you make it through this pod, I very much appreciate it. If not, I understand as well. uh, but before we get into the news of free agency and everything else, Packers are mourning the loss of Bob Harlan this week. Obviously, a critical and instrumental figure in the franchise. Started for the Packers in 1989 and retired in 2008 when Mark Murphy took over. Um, as a Green Bay native and well, Green Bay suburb native, Ashwaubenon native, if you really want to get specific. Uh, I grew up in the shadow of Lambeau Field. I owned a duplex. I didn't own. My family owned a duplex. Uh, that was just to the, if I can think, to the west of Lambeau Field. We parked cars. We were the last house on our street prior to Lambeau Field. We parked cars and all that sort of nonsense and helped live because of the Packers' success. Um, Bob Harlan was instrumental in that. He approved the Favre trade back in 1991 and let Ron Wolf sort of hired Ron Wolf and let him run the franchise and hired Ron Wolf and hired Mike Holmgren that led that era of that team to a title and then okayed the trade for Rodgers um, for them to draft him and then hired Mike McCarthy for that era of team to go to a Super Bowl and win one. So it's a critically instrumental piece and part of the Packers' legacy to have passed. And very sad, but he was 89. He lived a great life. I think there was a lot of mourning, but a lot of like happy mourning from what I saw on my Twitter timeline. But I think like the biggest thing that just speaks to how important he was to the team was him revitalizing Lambeau Field. I listened to Kevin Harlan talk on Jim Rome's show. I think it was from the Super Bowl week about how this story's been told before. I'm pretty sure. I'm almost certain it has, but that the Packers were growing broke in the early 2000s. And in 1999, they had realized that the team wasn't going to be able to pay bills for the next couple of years. And so uh, Bob Harlan comes up with the stadium renovation and sells more stock to get that and help bring people to Lambeau Field and sort of make it a tourist destination and make it sort of the mecca of football that it has become today. And now the success of the franchise has just skyrocketed, right? And like I said, my family benefited from that, and the whole city and suburb of Green Bay all benefited from the Packers being such a staple franchise in the NFL. Like it looks a lot different from if they don't do that, they try and figure out the book somewhere else, or if God forbid Bob Harlan said, you know, we'll just sell to an owner, like he can buy the team and he could take on all the debt. And they can run it that way. That'd be terrible, right? Like the Packers would cease to be the only publicly owned team in major sports, right? At least in America. And so for them to lose, um, Bob is sad, and I think the team said they're going to have like a public, um, not funeral, but like a public showing, not of the body or anything like that, obviously, but just like a display of like an in memoriam, essentially is what I'm trying to say. Excuse my sick Dayquil brain. I'm trying to get through it. Uh, so if you're in Green Bay, go to that. It'll be soon. I'd imagine sometime over the summer. Um, but either which way, Bob Harlan, um, instrumental in the Packers' success, and will be missed by the entire franchise. I think I saw just a copious amount of support and like mourning from the NFL. I think a lot of the teams did. I saw Roger Goodell put out a statement. I think Ed Policy said something as well. Obviously, so did Brett and so did Aaron. Like just a well revered guy. I don't think you could say too much about him. Like I think it is cool that he was like Wisconsin through and through for all of his life essentially. I saw Olivia Harlan Decker tweeted that he wasn't just like Wisconsin pro sports guy. He like loved all Wisconsin sports, and he got really excited when she met Sam Decker and was dating him because he knew of his success and his high school success and such like that. So, um, any which way, it's just a loss for the franchise, and he'll be missed. So, with that, let's talk about the free agency and sort of the lead up to free agency. I guess we're gonna like, kind of go in chronological order here. Um, I kind of lost track of the order in my notes, so bear with me if something's out of place. But we'll talk about each of these big issues and these big moves as as we go. So first up, the over the weekend, the Packers traded for Zaire Franklin from Indianapolis. They sent Colby Wooden over in his final year of his rookie deal for that trade, a 1-to-1 player trade. Something you don't see very often in the NFL. Like I feel like it's the first time the Packers have done that with quote unquote significant pieces in a while. Not the first time in my recent memory for sure. But like Colby Wooden played a lot of snaps for them last year. Franklin was a former two-time All-Pro for Indianapolis. So like they're getting a linebacker and a true middle linebacker that could free up Edgerrin Cooper and allow him to hopefully blossom into the standout linebacker we want him to be as he goes into year three. Um, has kind of dipped in his recent years, Zaire Franklin has. Um, Not loved by PFF, and this is the disclaimer for all the PFF stats that we have. Just it's PFF. We know that there's issues with it and things like that, but it is what it is. His coverage grade and his defense grade. I suppose I'll start with his defense grade. Was 38.4. Not great, not great for sure. Coverage 29.9. Like this, not good. He should be covering that much as a linebacker, anyways. He'll definitely have some coverage snaps, but will be his majority. So, at least in Indianapolis, he had 589 of them last year, as opposed to I guess it was the majority of his coverage. So, I was wrong there, but I just I like it because I think they needed someone to obviously replace Quay. Looking at his stats, he had his most pressures in 2025 with 19. Again, this is just PFF's measure of his pressures. You'll find different numbers anywhere you look. Um, Only 3 sacks to those 19 pressures. Uh, 21 missed tackles, and he had the fewest tackles at 80 since 2021. He had been over 100 for 3 years straight, and he didn't have any dip in snaps or anything this year. Um, couldn't really tell you why, but um, hopefully he still has some juice left. If anything, I saw on Twitter he's got a fiery personality, so I think that definitely helps them in that category. They need some tenacity in that locker room, a veteran presence, and I think like that's the biggest thing I think is that Zaire brings is one, he's a true middle linebacker over Quay, who's kind of like a hybrid of sorts, and two, he just is a veteran who has played the position and has some fire, right? And hopefully he can break some of that to this defense to maintain its sort of elite level when healthy, right? Um, he worth noting that Jonathan Gannon did coach Zaire Franklin in Indianapolis from 2018 to 2020 when he was their D-backs coach, so some familiarity there with Zaire Franklin and Jonathan Gannon. I'd bet probably a good reason um, why they ended up going out and trading for him. And plus, uh, you get a little more stability there. Like I think not stability in that Quay was often hurt, which like, he got hurt sometimes, wasn't like often hurt, but he has 2 more years left on his deal, this year and next, and I think that gives you a chance to let anybody you draft kind of develop for 2 years, or try this again at linebacker in a couple years down the road. Like, I don't think they were really keen on re-signing Quay for the number he ended up signing with, which is 3 years, $40 million with the Raiders. And so, I'd much rather pay Zaire Franklin $16 million over the next 2 years, have that veteran presence, and know that hopefully he can bring some sort of tenacity to the defense. Um, Other than that, don't have too many thoughts on him. I haven't seen a whole lot of tape. I did see that people were wondering that like the last time I remember seeing him was the Packers running circles around him. I think it was 2 years ago. So we will definitely see. But yeah, Quay signed 3 years, $40 million with the Raiders. Not surprising he leaves after not being able to get an extension done with his fifth year option last year, and I think just doing a 1 year extension, if I remember that correctly. Like they didn't pick up the fifth year, they signed it lower than whatever it was. So good for Quay. Hope he succeeds over in Vegas. He kind of like screams Raider to me. But Raiders spent a lot of money on their defense today, so we'll see how that continues. So, all right. Next up is Sean Ryan got his extension, 3 years, $33 million with money that could be up to $39 million. Um, they found that they found they have decided their center of the future. I imagine is how this will go. Uh, Not sure how I feel about the line in general. I'll go through the rest of the moves right now. We'll talk about the line overall. So they end up cutting Elgton Jenkins and getting the big cap uh, dollars back with his release, $19.5 million by doing so. They re-signed their restricted free agent Dalton Kennard, and they reworked Aaron Banks' contract to rework it into a signing bonus and basically kick the can down the line on his money. But he's all but locked in to the roster this year and next year because his cap hit is less than his dead cap hit would be next year. So come hell or high water, I would bet that Aaron Banks is on this roster um, for this year and next year, and that kind of gives me some reserve, right? We aren't fans of Aaron Banks around here. He didn't have the greatest year in Green Bay his first year after a questionable signing at best by Goody last year going out and getting him. So they must see something in him that they don't want to cut bait with him right away. And I don't really know what that is, right? And that's up to the coaches to get that the most out of him. But I'd imagine what it's looking like now is Jordan Morgan at left tackle, Aaron Banks at left guard, Sean Ryan at center, Anthony Belton at right guard, and Zach Tom at right tackle. And that kind of just whelms me. It's a lot of unknown outside of Zach Tom. Like, I think Sean Ryan did a good job at center when he filled in for EJ this year, towards the end of the year. But I I hesitate on Jordan Morgan, obviously, because he's yet to be a proven commodity. He's been waiting in the wings to get a spot on a line, and he hasn't went out and grabbed it. Um, Rasheed Walker leaving in free agency, I would imagine that hasn't been announced yet. Neither has Romeo Dobbs or um, someone else. I forget someone else big, but I can't remember at the moment. If I'm looking, no, that was it. Yeah, it's basically just Sheed and Romeo Dobbs who haven't signed yet. And so, but like Jordan Morgan, they're gonna slot in at left tackle, and I am like okay with all of them except for Zach Tom. Like Anthony Belton is somewhat unproven at right guard. I think he did fine last year when he was thrust in there amidst injuries across the line, etc. I'm trying to find his PFF page now to see how many snaps he played last year, but I don't think it was a ton. He played, let's see, in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 14 games, um, only 11 of which were on the line, and he pretty much started from um, week 12, week 12 on. I'm trying to find his blocking grades, so excuse me for a moment. Yeah, he played 463 snaps at right guard and 86 at right tackle. So 10-ish games, like that's fine. He didn't grade out very well, that's for sure. Um, but didn't allow any sacks, so that's a plus. It's just he's a second year guy, right? Like we just don't know what his full potential is just yet. And so it's just a big shrug emoji for me right now on Anthony Belton. But the line itself is I think they're gonna invest in line pretty heavily in the draft. Or I'd imagine they'd have to at least one player, at least a tackle or a guard, um, to fill in for either Belton or Banks down the line. But it's interesting for sure. Like it either has a chance to be good, like just okay, or it has potential to be pretty lackluster in my opinion. Like your right tackle shouldn't be your best player; it should be your left tackle. And at this point, I think Jordan Morgan, just by purely not being able to prove himself, is like the fourth best player on the line. Like I think Sean Ryan and uh, Zach Tom, not in that order, clear Jordan Morgan, and I think we saw more of Anthony Belton last year than Jordan Morgan. But I know there's a lot of hype around Jordan Morgan to end the year. He was doing some good stuff, but I'm just not sold on him right now. And so he's eons better than Aaron Banks. We'll put it that way. But it's not. I'm just. I'm a little tenuous on the line, and so I don't hate the contract. I think it's fine. I saw people were complaining that it was like double of what Spotrack's market value was. I think Spotrack's market value calculator is a bit off. Like 6.5 million a year for Sean Ryan was like their projection. Yeah, that's probably fine, but the center market was bleak this year. And if you didn't go get Lindbaum, the former Rave who signed with I think with the Chargers, somebody I forget who he signed with. Um, you were going to be in a bad spot, and so the familiarity of Sean Ryan probably is what forced the Packers' hand, as well as bump that number up, right? Like I'm sure you could have got that on the market if you would have wanted to hit the market. So yeah, all things considered, line a bit of an issue for me right now. We will definitely see. To give more time to EJ because he deserves it. A long career in in Green Bay. Sad to see him go, but you understand why, as like football being a business type of move, was hurt by no fault of his own the last couple years. Played 9 games in 2025, 15 in 2022 and 2023. Did play a full season last year, but just had a lot of injuries on his body. And for a player that just turned 30, you just don't want to pay $20 million if you don't have to. And Packers didn't want to do that, so they end up saving $20 million in the cap and say goodbye to I believe their second was at the time their second longest tenured player, drafted in 2019 and pretty much started from the get go. So, um, with that being said, the other big move was the Packers and Brian Gutekunst traded Rashan Gary for a fourth round pick in 2027 from the Dallas Cowboys. Goody, you did it again. I I don't know how he managed to swindle Jerry Jones into giving him a fourth round pick for Rashan Gary. The fourth round picks for the Packers have generally been pretty good. That's where kind of Goody makes his bread and butter. Uh they're in those middle rounds, and so I love the idea of getting a pick for Rashan Gary. I thought he was going to be kind of like Jair was last year, where they want to trade him, but no one wants to pick up his deal. Alas, Jerry Jones comes to the rescue. And what I don't fully understand in the logic from the Cowboys is that the Packers needed to bolster their edge rush before the 2025 season. So they go out and trade for Micah Parsons because Rashan Gary wasn't cutting it as their primary edge rusher. Fast forward 8 months, now you're the Dallas Cowboys, and you send a fourth round pick to the Green Bay Packers for the edge rusher the Packers specifically needed to cover up with Micah Parsons. I just don't get it. And so they end up having a couple of guys like their line is fine, but they Kenny Clark and Rashan Gary back on the same line. Sure, like it worked out well for the Packers for a little while. Kenny Clark obviously still good, still productive, I should say. Rashan Gary just doesn't have the motor. I don't think. I'm not trying to like crap on Rashan Gary as he's going out the door. Excuse me, but I don't understand it. I truly don't get it. They could have just signed him if when he got cut because he was probably going to get cut. And so I like getting the pick back for Rashan Gary. Definitely think it's a good move. Um, in other edge rushing news, Kingsley Enagbare signs a deal with the New York Jets, so he is gone in free agency, which kind of brings me to my bigger point on the Gary move in general. Like I said, I like it. I would have done it every time. But now there's a serious need for depth along the entire line, right? Colby Wooden is gone, so you lose a D tackle that way, and you lose Rashan Gary in the trade, so you lose one of your edge rushers, right? I think one, depth, and two, talent on the defensive, like in the defensive front, is waning at the moment. Big fan of Micah Parsons, obviously. That is a known, but he is coming off an ACL surgery. Like that's not a easy thing to come back from. Luckily, he's young, but not easy to come back from an ACL surgery. And then your second edge rusher, as of this moment of 9:40 Monday night, is Lucas Van Ness, and not a big fan of that. As you guys know, my opinion on Lucas Van Ness, but it's interesting for sure. Like they still have Warren Brinson, and they still have Colin Oliver along the line, two guys that they drafted last year. But I just don't know what, excuse me, what you're really gonna do with just Micah Parsons. And so I'd imagine that they're gonna address edge rusher in the draft. I mentioned last week, Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State is my one of the guys I could pick in the second or third round. If they want to go edge rusher early, which I think they ought to. Um, so edge rushers and sort of pocket pressures are slowly becoming an area of concern, and one I think they need to address either in free agency or in the draft. But I don't think it's going to be free agency because while they have cleared up like $35 million in cap space this year, I don't know if they really want to screw with their compensatory picks that they're going to get for Malik Willis signing with the Dolphins and uh, wherever Rasheed Walker goes, wherever Romeo Dobbs goes, if they get one for Quay, all this kind of stuff, right? Like, I think they're going to be hesitant to spend real money that takes away from all those picks they're set to get in 2027. So, sneaky something to keep an eye on is what does the defensive front look like come the beginning of the season? Are they going to invest heavy in the draft? Do they kind of zag when they were meant to zig on spending money in free agency? But the first day has come and gone. They haven't made a splash. Their biggest signings were Bull Melton and Christian Welch, and so plus Chris Brooks signed his extension. But I'm something to keep an eye on for sure. Something to keep an eye on for sure. As I mentioned, Malik Willis signs 3 years, $67.5 million with the Dolphins. Packers should get a pretty big comp pick for that. Good for Malik to get a chance to start as the Dolphins cut Tua, which is a decision in and of itself. But I think John Eric Sullivan and Jeff Hafley down there in Miami are frankly just getting rid of the entire stink that is Chris Greer's tenure in Miami, getting rid of all the bad contracts and all that good stuff, rather bad stuff, um, as they start their rebuild anew. So, but yeah, 3 years, $67.5 million from Malik Willis gives them a chance to sort of get his feet wet initially as the first year starter, and gives the Dolphins an opportunity that if it's not working out with Malik, they can draft a new quarterback in 27 and let him develop as Malik keeps playing. I think it's a good plan, and gives Malik Willis a chance to start, which he definitely earned with the Packers in his backup tenure here the last couple of years. So yeah, good for Malik. And lastly, this probably would have went well with the previous segment of talking about all the cap space that the Packers have, but Packers are rumored to be talking to the Philadelphia Eagles to trade for Jalen Carter. I'm not sure what assets they're going to trade for Jalen Carter. I am really unsure of how they can afford to do that. But as the Eagles just signed Jordan Davis to an extension, um, I'm guessing there's just not room on the line for two big contracts for D tackles for the Eagles. So I mean, if they want to get a good D tackle, he's it. Um, 4 sacks this past year, played a significant lower number of games. Looks like he was hurt from weeks 14, 15, and 16, as well as a couple early on in the season. So, but like I said, 4 sacks, a bunch of pressures, and just a stout guy in the middle of the defense. So, could be a couple second round picks, could be a variety of things. We'll see. We'll see. Him next to Devontae Wyatt could be fun for a year, depending on how they do Devontae Wyatt. But I think if I were to guess, I would imagine some of this cap that they have is going to go towards extending their current crop of on their last year of their deal guys. Like Tucker Kraft needs a new deal. They might extend him and make his cap bigger this year versus next year, or so on and so forth, or further years down the line. A couple other guys I'm trying to think of guys who do. Christian Watson, even though he just got his new extension, that number is gonna be big for him. By the way, as Alec Pierce signs a mega deal with the Indianapolis Colts. So yeah, there's a couple of guys they need to extend, but I'm trying to find the multi-year roster. Here we go. So Devontae Wyatt too. Obviously, they could extend him and have his cap hit be bigger this year, even though it's already at $12 million this year. Uh, Probably not McDuffie. Tucker Kraft is a good one. If they wanted to extend Dontayvion Wicks, they could do it this year if they really wanted to. But yeah, that was kind of it. So we'll see. We'll see for sure. So, all right, folks, that's kind of the primer on the Packers free agency tampering period. Again, sorry for the nasaliness that exists in my voice right now. Trust me, I'm not a big fan either. But a lot of departures from the Packers organization this today, rather in the last couple of days, uh, as tampering begins and free agency begins as well. And the league year starts on Wednesday, so uh, I'll be curious to see if the Packers do anything with that 31 2-ish million dollars in cap that they have. I don't even know who they could begin to get. There's not a whole lot of big names out there, and I think the Packers really do value their comp picks in 27. So we will definitely see. We'll see when it comes that way. So, um, any which case, if they do make a big splash, I'll try to be back in your podcast feeds when they do. Otherwise, you'll hear me soon. We'll call it soon. Whenever the Packers have enough news and free agencies for me to come back out here. Hopefully with Jordan or someone else as a guest, either which way. So thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. Go check me out on at Numac and Gyro on Twitter, at PackagGSPN for the pod, where all the links are tweeted out every episode drop. And then if you're a YouTube person, you want to listen on YouTube or watch on YouTube, uh, at Talk with Tundra on YouTube, go subscribe there. We'd appreciate it. Anything else? GSPN.info for all things GSPN. Go check out Ty and Rohan on the Bucks feed, all that good stuff. So, all right, folks, that does it for me. Thank you all. Go Packers, and I'll talk to you soon.